and welcome to UC Partner Trends with me, David Dungay. This is the series where we talk to experts about the opportunities and challenges facing the channel today. I am joined by Mark Herbert, Chief Partner Evangelist at Destiny. Welcome to the show, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, David. Thank you very much for having me on.
Great. So today we're going to be talking about the future of voice in Microsoft Teams and what that means for the partner landscape. But before we get into that conversation, Mark, do you want to give us a bit of an intro to yourself and the business?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Mark Herbert. As you said, I'm working here at Destiny. Destiny are a large telecommunications company across Europe, and we also have a very clear focus on collaboration and communication tools for the channel as well.
Fantastic. Well, Mark, let's dive straight in to those questions. Why should partners be focused on making a Teams voice proposition work for them, and where are they going to find true value within the ecosystem right now?
Well, a good question. If we look at Teams today, and Teams Voice in particular, because Teams really has a whole range of services, but we're focused on Teams Voice, which I think, in my view, is around PSTN and phone calls and things like that. Microsoft today currently have around 14-15 million Teams voice users on the Teams platform. By about 2027 to 28, that will be 40 to 50. So going from 14 to 15 to 40 to 50 million. So there's the growth, there's the opportunity, I think. So what we're saying to partners is you can be a part of that growth. Look at other telecommunications platforms. Are they getting the same level of growth? Where should you put your focus? And I think the current level of growth on Microsoft Teams really is coming from a kind of natural churn, early adopters. It's still kind of in the early majority phase. It's not quite in the mainstream for telephony. But we're seeing people, as they're now looking at changing their phone system, they're looking very carefully at Teams, looking at how they can make it work for their business. Are there shortfalls they need to fill with other services to make it work, and so on? So that's a relatively passive move, I'd say, by customers. They're going to change it and they're looking at Teams. I think in the next few years, what we'll see is much more good reasons to go to Microsoft Teams. Not just because it's the next thing, but it's going to bring you something which is really valuable. So how can partners really come up to speed on what is the new value Microsoft are going to deliver, and how that's going to be actively driving customers onto Teams Voice? So I think that's where the Microsoft proposition is really important. I see the voice channel are still a little bit underweight on Microsoft expertise. So there's an opportunity then for them to become much more Teams experts and have a good Teams practice, really understand the solution. So when customers are talking about Teams, they can have experts on hand and be the Teams guys for the customer.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting point you make there. Going from 14-15 million to 40 to 50 million, what a huge opportunity. And of course, the overall Teams sort of UC platform will be growing within this time frame as well, thus expanding that opportunity beyond 2027 as well. So, huge amounts of opportunity. I speak to some of the analysts in the industry, and so the general perception is sort of almost 9 out of 10 new UC deployments are going on Microsoft Teams. So this is going to create so much opportunity to convert some of that into voice sort of customers as well down the line. I do want to talk about the value though, Mark. It's really, really important for channel partners to really generate value out of these voice propositions, voice migrations for their own business. Where do you see those specific opportunities for partners to create value for their customers, and themselves around Teams Voice?
I think if we look at Microsoft Teams Voice today, Microsoft's kind of done us a favour in that they've left gaps. It's not the world's best phone system, for one. It's okay and it's good enough for many business, but there are still plenty of opportunity for partners to bring complementary services and solutions really to top up the value gap, and bring their own value to the customer and deliver the solution the customer needs. And that also helps with the adoption, because customers may be held back on adoption because Teams doesn't quite do that thing they need. So think about how we can work with tools which allow coexistence with other services to top up the value in Teams. And then you can really, you don't have to say no to any opportunity. customer wants to use Teams, there's always a but. How do we fix the but? And so, is it because they need to work alongside another call controller to give them the call control features which they rely on today? And then you need a bridging product like our call to Teams, shameless plug really, but that allows a partner to say yes to any customer need. So, if they need a really weird kind of call business process scenario, then we can work with their existing platform to keep that, and yet still allow the end user experience of a Teams voice, using the Teams client for their phone calls.
Yeah, I mean, what are you seeing around the voice migration, particularly after that decision's been made? And we're hearing things around, particularly in the large enterprise space, where potentially these projects aren't really gaining the traction straight out of the gate that those businesses would expect. Mostly because of things like slow adoption by staff, hard to change those kind of ingrained habits and those kind of things. Is this an opportunity for partners to really extend that value as well?
I think so. I mean, the migration of a phone system, never really underestimate how complicated that can be, actually. And it's one of the reasons which slowing adoption really is because migration is really complicated. And also, many customers, their phone system actually drives business process within their organization. It's not just for phone calls. It's to do with call control. It's to do with customer service and metrics and key performance indicators and agent performance management. So there's a load of things which the phone service does. It's not easy just to switch that to Teams. So you need to think about, are there elements of what we're doing today we need to retain? The main driver really is the users need to have Teams as their single pane of glass. So they need phone calls in Teams. But underlying that, do they need to retain an existing platform? And if they do, that really does smooth the migration process, because it's not a big switch over then. You're saying basically, we're going to gradually move your voice service over to Teams. Today, we'll keep everything as it is and we'll just change the user experience. So they're using Teams to make the calls, but your existing back-end process stays the same. So suddenly you've removed a whole load of pain from the customer, and you're adding value really, because you're delivering the key thing they need today, which is, I want my users on Teams. The IT guys love it because they're removing software from the desktop, which is doing other, a software, and they can take that off. They've got a single client across all their devices and so on. So I think having that coexistence with existing platforms really does unblock the migration opportunity. It also allows you as the partner to be in the customer. You're then their Teams guys. That's a really important place to be. And I mean, if you're a voice partner today and Teams is a bit new, then try this as a start, because you're not having to do too much Teams stuff. You're really still concentrating on the voice platform and all the expertise and value you're delivering in that. You're basically just using Teams as a client, so it's a quite good first step. I think there are, as we go into the future, Microsoft will start to close the gap of functionality between, traditional PBX services and Teams call control. Today there is a gap. That's an opportunity. So use that opportunity really to drive your position in with the customer. Make sure you retain that value. And also, if you're selling them voice services today not on Teams, you can retain that and still drive value within that with the customer. If you're a non-Teams voice provider, you're under threat from Teams today, without a doubt. I mean, the customer's looking at it. There's a reason they're not doing it. Is it a function gap, or is it just inertia, or is it, there's maybe cost? There could be several reasons why the customer's not switching over. They've probably got a propensity to move over. And if you are the guys that are going to help them on that journey, you can secure what you're doing today. That takes away the threat and the risk around that. You can retain the value and the revenue from what you're selling, plus then take the customer where they want to go. So you can be completely the good guys on this, and see it as an opportunity. You're going to sell a load of extra time, consultancy work. You're going to build a Teams practice, which makes you a really strong contender then in the market to lead with Teams. I'd say whenever you're in a call with a customer to talk about telephony, start with the Teams conversation. Don't use it as kind of a fallback. Start with it and say, what's your view on Teams? What's your strategy? How can we help you achieve that? Because you might uncover the fact that that's something they're actually thinking of. You can be there at pole position and seize that opportunity.
Mark, I want to pick up on the what you said there around the gap between Microsoft Teams today as a phone system and those traditional sort of PBX players out there, and that is quite rightly that opportunity for partners there as well. I feel like we've been talking about that gap for about 4 years. How much of that gap has changed? And what kind of timeline can partners expect this gap to still remain there from a functionality point of view, which presumably Microsoft will focus some attention on it at some point, but they don't seem to have really closed that gap enough in the last 4 years, particularly.
No, and I think some of the real nuanced features. I mean, if you're selling a phone system to an enterprise, they're using a load of features on that switch, probably a very different set of features to someone else. So, but there's a core set which everyone uses, and that's what Microsoft provides. So it's kind of voicemail, auto attendance, and call queues. Not much else. Dial tone. So that satisfies many businesses, and I think Microsoft's original view was, if customers really want this enough, they'll compromise what they do to bring their level of need down to that. And some customers have. I think others are just, they're too reliant on some of those really complex features that have grown up over time. I mean, if you look at phone platforms, they may have, something like a Mitel and a Vio, those really established systems. They've been fixed really in functionality probably for 10 years, but they grew up over 20 years. So you've got 30 years of experience in a phone system. I think in Microsoft, by the time their Teams Voice has been 10 or 20 years old, it will be as good as that. I think it probably will accelerate, but for the time being, the gap is closing, but quite slowly. I think Microsoft are expecting there will be a bigger pull feature, which will force customers across. They will then make the compromise to leave things behind. We'll talk about that, as being the sort of future, but I think for today, looking at that migration, that gap, I'd say you've got probably 5 years of time to keep the customer maintained on a parallel system and delivering that extra and differentiated value before Microsoft really can overlap fully in terms of that functionality.
Well, you mentioned differentiated value there, Mark. Let's talk about differentiation. With the channel, it's all about differentiation, right? So, what are your top tips for channel partners to differentiate themselves when it comes to Teams Voice?
Okay, so selling Teams Voice, the vanilla out of the box Microsoft experience is fine, but you're undifferentiated at that point. So what you need to think about is, how do I make my Teams proposition different to what they can just go online and buy off the page? I think then look at, as an organization, what other tooling would you put around Teams when you're talking to a customer? There might be software tools to do things like coexistence with things like Call to Teams. Are you looking at compliance options? What does the customer do in compliance? And any business or vertically critical applications and CRM integration. All those things today, Microsoft don't deliver out of the box. So as a partner, you can think about, I'm going to specialize in delivering team services to the financial sector. And there's a whole raft of tools you would need to bring along in your toolbox to the customer to have that conversation. And so you can demonstrate to the customer that if they want to go to Teams, you've got the expertise really to make sure that all the kind of ecosystem tools and applications are going to be delivered at the same time in a controlled fashion. And they're going to have a migration plan, all of that expertise. I think also get skills in your organization. You should be using this today yourself and really understand it, so you can show the customer how you've got competence, and think about what you need to do with your personnel as well, both the technical and the sales and pre-sales personnel, to make sure they can understand Teams and some of the sort of consultative conversations they need to be having with customers, and they ask for sales support as well.
Fantastic. So, Mark, let's look towards the future now. We're seeing so much emerging technology hit this space. Microsoft obviously huge in the AI sort of arena right now. They're really investing heavily. What sort of emerging trends and technologies do you see impacting the way voice is going to be used within Teams? Firstly, and then, is there an opportunity there for partners around things like maybe Copilot or maybe automation more generally? Like, what do you think?
I think yes. If you look at Microsoft Teams PBX, Microsoft are not setting out to have the best phone system in the world. I think. I mean, they might end up there, but today they're being relatively steady in terms of their feature release. But if you look at the other things they're doing, like Copilot, for example, which is a killer application for business, it really is one of those sort of tipping point applications that would make someone do that when they see the value they can get from having, effectively, an additional workforce in AI working for them. Now, I think Microsoft see that if customers see that those really big value propositions are coming their way and they want to use Copilot, then they'll have to put their voice into Teams anyway to get the real value from that. So that's one of those sort of features where don't worry about the Microsoft phone system capability, because they're going to buy it for something else, and so if the customer's going to use something like Copilot or these extra AI tools or some of the compliance services they're bringing out, which are really quite high functioning, then that will drag the customer into Microsoft Voice. Anyway, they're not going to be able to hold back, because that's where they get the sort of all the value by doing that. And at that point, you as a partner need to make sure you can be with the customer on that journey. What do they need to do to move into that? If they're saying, I need to use Copilot in my business, I need to use Microsoft Voice services, but I can't lose the features on my existing PBX, then you can solve that problem today. We've got tools to help you have that PBX coexist with Copilot. So suddenly, the customer can have the best of all worlds, straight away. But I think look at the other things Microsoft's bringing out, and it's all about they're forcing the customer to adopt voice without even knowing it, because they want something else actually, and voice needs to come with it. So you need to be on that kind of pull from Microsoft and delivering the capability for the customer to go on that journey and deliver that next thing. And as a business, should you be looking at, not just if you're a voice partner today, should you be looking at some of the other stuff, which is the real pull factor? That's the future. Assuming one day the world, every phone call was on Microsoft Teams, there were no other PBXs. What would your business be? You'd need to be doing the next thing. And so look at what are the next things around Copilot and Voice AI and some of the really slick automation and compliance solutions where there's big value. Customers are going to be working in a more controlled and high compliance environment. So there's going to be non-discretionary spend. Non-discretionary spend is great, because they've got no choice but to spend the money. So if you can be there helping them fulfill that need, maybe with competitive offers where they can save a bit, then that's definitely helpful. And I see, AI and Copilot and compliance all sort of driving into that high detail forensic management of voice. And so, as a partner, that's a really high value place to be. So think about that as an option, but still you can retain the current value you're driving into your business. So we've got the tools here at Destiny to help you have full coexistence of your existing value plus the new value. So you can really do both. So I don't want to make this a big ad for Destiny. Well, I actually do, but I try not to, because I can sit here and say you can really have both, and that's a great opportunity.
Yeah, I think you make some really pertinent points there, Mark. These new technologies coming down the line, well, they're not coming down the line, they're here now, they're being developed and built upon already. It is only a matter of time, really, before customers turn around and go, well, I can compromise there because I need Copilot or whatever else it is. And partners need to be ready for that, for sure. So, Mark, before we leave, let's just get a bit of a forward-looking statement. How do you see this Teams Voice proposition developing, and what are you excited about for the coming sort of year and the direction that this is all travelling?
So I think where we see our partners being most successful, and I said this earlier, is lead with Teams. Have that first conversation with Teams, demonstrate to the customer you are their Teams expert if they, as they need them going forward. So really the opportunity is there to lead with that. Start to think about how you would rejig your business if that was the case. It may be the case. I mean, no one's got a crystal ball, but you can feel the force on this, and it's definitely, there's a lot of things going in one direction here.
Fantastic. So, Mark, unfortunately, that is all we have time for, but thank you so much for joining me and sharing some of your insights.
It's a pleasure, David. Thank you very much for having me on. Look forward to coming again.
And thank you for watching. Don't forget you can follow all the action on UC Partner Trends by following the UC Partner Trends hashtag on social media. That's it from me. See you next time.